I've been very fortunate to play at some of the greatest stadiums all over the world. What gives me the right to then say that I'm not happy?
Over the next 2 years, the Rugby League World Cup 2021, in partnership with Movember and alongside Rugby League Cares, will deliver mental fitness workshops to 8,000 young Rugby League players and their parents. These sessions will teach people how to look after their own mental fitness as well as that of those around them. To tell us more about why mental fitness is just so important, I'm speaking with a Rugby League legend with an endless list of honours, who since retirement has been focused on helping others. Keith, you were born in the Rugby League heartland of Huddersfield. What age were you when you first started playing rugby?
Yeah, I was 9 years old, but my brother played at Huddersfield Schools, 1985, pre-match game at the Challenge Cup down at Wembley. So for him to play in that game, such a massive occasion, the Challenge Cup final, and it's steeped in history. But I wanted to follow in his footsteps a little bit. You know, he's my older brother. You look up to him a little bit, and he was playing rugby, so I just sort of like followed in his footsteps a little bit. Got into football, like I say, very sport orientated. But the local rugby union team, Huddersfield YMCA, was just round the corner, so I ended up just going there. You don't know the difference as a kid. You just want to play. You just want to play sport and play rugby. So I ended up getting into that at 9 years old.
How early on, once you started playing rugby and you started with the union, did it become apparent that you had a real talent for the game?
To be honest, I wasn't one of them kids that had dreams and aspirations to be a professional rugby player or be a professional sportsman. So I ended up just going to the local rugby league team. One of the coaches there just saw some potential, and it just ended up going on about hearsay, and a few words were said to a few coaches at Sheffield, at Huddersfield, and then the opportunity came for me to go down to Sheffield and have a trial. So my path sort of like was never a dream to be a rugby player. It just sort of like happened in that way. I got the opportunity, and that's when my attitude changed.
And you certainly didn't float along in terms of your career. You go on to have a quite brilliant rugby league career, but then at the age of 35, you've had 17 years in the game, and it all comes to a shuddering halt. You get that knee ligament damage that forces you into retirement. You know, every sportsman and woman knows that this day is going to come when it all comes to an end and you have to find something else to do. Was that day, whenever it was going to come, a day you feared?
I always put it off. I got to 35 and it wasn't the injury that was a problem. An ACL nowadays, it's standard injury. You know, they happen all the time, and it's not like 30 years ago it was career ending straight away. So I knew that I had a tough 9 months ahead of me, but then getting the MRSA in hospital, going through 12 operations in 10 months, and dealing with that, like I say, at 35 years old, and then it came to a head when, after the last surgery, I went to see the specialist, and he couldn't give me any answers. And we always want to know answers. We always want to know what the problem is, if anything's a problem. But he said, I can't do anything for you. You're going to have to retire. And that was, you know, one of the defining moments when my world sort of like fell apart, because I didn't see a future. I didn't know what I was going to do, and I didn't know where I was going to go. You know, I ended up splitting up with my partner and moving in with Luke Ambler. And I just remember one point when I got to rock bottom, I just remember sitting on his sofa. He was out at work, just in his house on his own. And I just remember sitting there sobbing and crying my eyes out and just thinking, I've wasted my life. You know, my life's just been, what have I done? You know, I can't see any future. I can't see where I'm going to go. I can't see what I'm going to do. You know, my life's just been a total waste.
Did you feel in some ways your career and your control over it had been stolen from you, rather than being something I've decided enough is enough?
Yeah, and unless you go through that, that's what some people can't comprehend, because, like I said, my career has been the best. You know, I've been in a very, very privileged position. I've played professional rugby league in a sport that I've grown up with, and I've lived the dream. I've travelled the world. I've played for my country many times, 43 times, and I've been very fortunate to play at some of the greatest stadiums all over the world. What gives me the right to then say that I'm not happy? I couldn't deal with it, and I didn't want to deal with it. my world had ended because all I'd known was rugby. Everything that I had was sport, was rugby. Because if I were going through some issues, if I had a problem, emotionally I couldn't deal with it. So I'd run away from it and I'd go to rugby. So that was always my coping mechanism. I knew that if I were having a bit of a tough time at home, I could go into the changing room the next day, can have a laugh and a crack with lads, and it'd be forgotten about. And then when that got taken away, and I say taken away, and that's a problem, it wasn't really taken away, it just happens. Dealing with it, you lose a massive sense of purpose, sense of yourself. But, and again, just saying, think positive thoughts, it's not always that easy. No. As a 20-year-old, I made my international debut on a tour to Papua New Guinea, Fiji and New Zealand, but I didn't see that. I was just blinkered by what was going forward.
For very different reasons. I mean, I know a little bit of what you're talking about, that kind of world falling apart, your loss of identity, you find coping strategies. I remember one of mine being just playing to the bottle for a while to numb the pain and just escape everything that's going on in my head. And that was a path you took for a while, hitting the drink at its worst. How bad did it get?
Yeah, a lot of it is the boredom side of things as well, don't get me wrong. I wasn't working, I wasn't doing anything. I didn't work for a year after I retired, maybe even longer. So I ended up just being a kid again. It was occupying my mind, occupying my time and keeping me busy and giving me something to do. And that ended up being my purpose. The fact that it was just going out at the weekend and gave me something to look forward to. And then, like you say, you get into that snowball effect where it ends up being one night and then it ends up being 2 nights. And then one moment, it were around Christmas time and I just got that drunk. And it might have even been a New Year's Eve. And I was absolutely paralytic and I went back to Luke Amber's house. And I put my head through his wall. I headbutted his wall. Thankfully, it was only thankfully it was a plasterboard wall.
I know you're a strong man.
Yeah, I'm not that strong, but there were the stupid things that I got into, and waking up and just seeing what you've created, and letting people down and dealing with that. It's hard to deal with, and it's hard to comprehend. Not only was I feeling a failure to myself, but I was also a failure to everybody else.
But you did get yourself out of it, and for anyone going through mental health problems, loss of identity, loss of job, whatever it might be, it's for many, it's about finding that narrow way through, and often it is just a narrow way through. How did you find it, and what did it look like?
I was very fortunate, because I'm still going through it a lot. Still going now. I thought I ended up getting a job at the Leeds Rhinos Foundation afterwards. A year and a half, 2 years after I'd finished and the final knee reconstruction. And it just sort of like gave me a little bit of purpose and it gave me a focus. But I wasn't ready for that because I didn't want to be... When you retire, you either want to stay involved straight away or you just want to cut all ties and get away from everything. And I wanted to cut all ties and get away from everything. I'm never going to play at Old Trafford again in front of 78,000 fans in a grand final. It's never going to happen. I can keep chasing it, but I'm never going to get it. So you have to substitute it. Like if you're an alcoholic, you can't just stop. You've got to substitute that addiction for something else. So I got massively into doing a lot of charity work. On a selfish point of view, it gave me a sense of purpose and it gave me that feel-good factor.
You clearly, as a player, can't show vulnerability on pitch, but off it, if you are struggling, whether it's fear over injury, fear over early retirement, what life's going to look like, or you are going through mental health problems, do you believe that rugby league is now moving to a place where players are able to be more open and honest if they are struggling?
To be honest, I think we're at the forefront of that at the moment. The way the sport has gone with Rugby League Cares and the player welfare system, we're excelling in it, so to speak, in the sport, and we've recognised it. And like we say, with the World Cup coming up in the Movember, we're working on a peer mentoring group where it is just basically somebody to talk to, because sometimes it helps. I went through it with Rob Burrow when he diagnosed with MND. Great friend of mine, very close, and you put yourself in his shoes. Like I say, I've got a young family, he's got 3 young kids. And when I found out, I didn't know how many people knew, because he told me before it was announced to the media. So I were like, I didn't have anybody to talk to at first, you know. So then I sort of like reached out, quick text message to Barry Mack and Kylie, and we just sort of like had a little bit of a chat about it, and it helps, and it does help, because you're getting somebody else's opinion, getting somebody else's perspective, and you're being able to just let some emotion out and just let some feeling out. And nobody judges, and that's the thing. We always think that people are judging, people thinking that you're weak, and like I say, I'm not an emotional person to people, but I'm a very emotional person.
What would your best piece of advice be?
Hobbies. Occupy yourself. It's right now at the moment with rugby, when you're so involved. I didn't have any hobbies as a rugby player. If I'd had a hobby or something to take my mind off it, you know, you've got to have a distraction from something else. I didn't have any distraction. I didn't have anything else to focus on. And like I said, now everything's all about educating myself. You've got to have your coping mechanisms, but you've also got to have your me time as well. You're always going to deal with them, but if you can reflect on things, and you can take away the emotional side of things, because your emotions, they're a massive factor in how you behave, is your emotions, and your emotions come from your thoughts. So if you can get away from them thoughts and emotions that are causing them problems, you're on the right path to being able to sort it out, because you can look at it in a subjective way. You can have a little bit more clarity and a little bit more focus. Sometimes it is a simple hobby where you can just have that release from the issues. The problems are still going to be there, but you can look at them in a different light.
Keith, you made a massive impact on the field. I've no doubt that what you said here will have a huge impact on many. Thanks so much.
My pleasure.
We've spoken to Keith Senior, a rugby league legend who has won everything there is to win in the British game. But since he's retired, he's had to face a whole number of different challenges. Challenges that so many of us also face in our different walks of life. But whether you're a rugby league star, a player, coaching staff, or someone watching our World Cup, these are all challenges we might face. That's why at next year's Rugby League World Cup, together with Movember and Rugby League Cares, we will be providing mental fitness workshops at all of our local host communities, as well as training for players, coaching staff, officials and volunteers. If you have been affected by anything that you've heard of this interview, then please do go to movember.com for plenty more advice and guidance. And also don't forget to find out more about our mental fitness initiative by visiting RLWC2021.com/mental fitness.